Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Trade Stock. We got a special episode queued up for you guys. So about a month ago, I was on the LeanScaper podcast with Benji Carlson, an epic host, a great podcast. And the episode was so fun, I decided I wanted to share it here on the Trade Stock platform so all of you guys can listen in. It's a fun conversation between Benji and I. I think you're going to take a lot away from it. The main topic, the main focus for the talk is growth, all about growing revenue, how to do it, the boring things actually that lead to consistent and hopefully constant growth. So dig in, enjoy, let's jump in.
What do you think are the most unhealthy views landscapers have about building a revenue machine in their business?
Ooh, that's a good one. First off,
this is crazy. Why did I decide to do this?
I think it's completely opposite of that.
But you're not perfect either.
I think we could be a $40 million company if I was better at this.
Why do you think that? That's interesting you say that. It's like the Master KPI.
Even if it's not sexy, even if it's not fun, that's something that you really have to investigate.
It's like if you get this one, everything downstream works. If you screw it up, everything downstream is screwed up.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the last 20 years.
Episode with Justin White, counting down in 3, 2, 1.
You're watching the LeanScaper podcast, where landscapers come to grow. If you want the systems, stories, and strategies to build a lean, mission-driven company that your team loves working for, keep watching.
Justin, welcome to the LeanScaper podcast. It is so good to have you, brother.
What's up, Benji? I'm stoked to be here, brother.
All right, we're going to do a quick start here. Some of the people are familiar with the story if they were at our event in Charlotte, but many won't be. I really want a quick rehash of some of the family turmoil that sort of flung you into the CEO seat and how your whole leadership journey began.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the last 20 years. I from the very beginning, my parents started the company in the late 80s, K&D Landscaping, and it was just a way to improve the revenue coming into the household. Although that, maybe didn't go as planned for the first 10 or 15 years. I think a lot of people know how hard it is to go from 0 to $1 million. But my parents got to that $1 million mark and they kind of hung out around there, 1 to 1.5 million for the good part of, 2000 to 2015. In 2015, that family turmoil kind of took place. And my parents, after 29 years, decided they were going to get a divorce. And, divorces happen all the time, but when it's a family business and my mom did all the books and everything in the office and my dad ran the field operations, a divorce actually brings with it potentially business ending. It's a business ending decision, right? Because how does a business survive that? And that was kind of my opportunity to step in and take the leadership role from my parents and succeed them, carry it on. It was always their vision for the kids to take over. And I don't think they thought it would happen at my age of 25 years old, but that was the chance I had. And so I took that chance. And with the support of both my parents, the support of an amazing coach, the support of my brother, my sister, and my cousin, I took over CEO and we built this really amazing vision to build the company to 30 million in revenue by 2030. And at the time, we were only about 1.5 million in revenue. So that was a really big vision at the time, a vision that truly, if I think back, I really didn't believe in 100%, but I had to convince myself enough to believe in it, to get my team to get on board. And after you say something, every week for 3 or 4 years, it starts to just become your reality. And that's exactly what we did. And so to give you a little background of where we were to where we are, 2015, we were about $1.5 to $2 million in revenue. And last year, 2024, we wrapped up the year right at a little over 20 million in revenue. And it's been a heck of a journey over the last, 10 years now.
Is it safe to say that moment when things were breaking down for the family, obviously anytime that happens, it's a tragedy. That's the truth. But there's a component to this that I think is, you were flung into this in a pretty abrupt fashion, were you not? Like, it was like, hey, Justin, you're the CEO now.
Yeah, it was as much as we had to make payroll next week and my mom moved out of state and I'm on the phone with her trying to figure out how do I run payroll? How do I print checks? Oh, how do I pay the vendors? How do I pay the credit card? How do I transfer money between bank accounts? I mean, I went
like
from
basic operational stuff.
Seriously basic stuff.
I don't.
Yes.
Is it mean to say that you were a bit clueless at that stage?
Oh no, I was very clueless, and to some degree,
you're like, what is landscaping?
Yeah, it's
very, very green, very wet behind the ears.
Extremely. Yeah, and we made some mistakes, right? And that teaches you, I think, the lessons that you need to be taught in order to take the company to the next level.
So you have had this incredible arc from 0 to I think you guys are right around a $20 million a year company, which is a super impressive growth curve. And I want to break down sort of, I think the theme of the episode, I don't know if we'll call it this, but I thought it'd be cool to talk about like the boring stuff that actually scales revenue. Everyone else is out chasing a shiny object, a new channel, a new tactic, a new way to close. My experience is that revenue is an output, not a strategy. And what really matters is focusing on principles, focusing on boring rote processes that need to get followed every time, and then the reward for that good behavior is sales. And so I thought we'd sort of examine your story through that lens. But before we do, I want you to just talk a little bit more about two things. One is you mentioned something a second ago. You're sort of implying there's a level of like, I have to fake it till you make it as a leader. I didn't fully believe the vision I was talking about. Can you, and from stage back in Charlotte, you said this thing is about like flexing the vision muscle. I want you to talk a little bit about what you've learned when it comes to casting a vision so big that at first even you don't believe it, but doing it anyway so that you start to brainwash yourself along the way. What's been your philosophy towards that?
Yeah, it's exactly that. In a lot of ways, you have to create a vision that is so big, it's scary to say. It feels uncomfortable to say. When you say it in a room for the first time, you probably feel very awkward and you probably don't believe it yourself. But when you do this, it puts yourself in a point of leverage that will allow you to perform at a level you didn't think was possible. And ultimately, at the end of the day, one of my main missions in life is to help people achieve a potential, an outcome that they didn't think they were capable of. And I figured this out myself by setting these really big, audacious goals, sometimes and oftentimes unrealistic goals. And it's not so much about, did I hit the goal or did I not hit the goal? And this is a little bit from Dallas, from Heather Moyes. It's more, how close did we get to that really crazy goal that we set? And when you start to do this on a regular basis and you do this on a yearly and quarterly basis, it doesn't make it as scary, because guess what? When you set that goal and you miss the target, the sun still comes up tomorrow. Like, everything's still okay. If anything, you're in a better spot than when you started. So if you can get through that process of setting big goals and being okay with whether you hit them or not hit them, then you can actually set bigger goals, and then you start to get closer and closer to that big goal, ultimately creating orders of magnitude improvement from where you are to where you want to be in a future state. And I don't think happiness or fulfillment comes from setting and achieving goals. I think that's a part of it, but it comes from achieving true progress in life. And when you're doing better each year, each month, or each day compared to where you were, that's what creates happiness. That is what creates fulfillment.
That is not just like a soundbite for a podcast. That's a very, very well studied and well understood bit of psychology that we know about now. Like, your sense of wellness and sense of meaning in your life is pretty neurochemically based. It's a combination of sort of dopamine and some serotonin and some norepinephrine, and the way that you actually stimulate that in your brain is what you just described. It is, people say it different ways. They'll say continuous improvement. They'll say 1% better every day. There's a bunch of different adages, a bunch of different terms we have for it, but the fundamental idea is, if you have a premeditated destination in the future and you're moving in a way that is visible to yourself. In other words, you can see your own progress towards it. It doesn't matter how fast it is. It doesn't matter how far off the goal is. It's I can feel myself moving along the tracks towards it. And if you have that, you kind of have everything. You are a happy, well-balanced, well-adjusted person if you have those things. if you are unhappy, not well adjusted, and really struggling, those would be like the first couple questions I'd ask myself. Do I have an end goal I'm moving towards? And am I moving towards it in a way that I can prove to myself, hey, progress is being made? It's such a fundamental point and so important, especially in business. You are, you're the kind of landscaper, you're the kind of leader who I would say is very plugged in. And by that, I mean, you're at events, you're speaking from stage, you're speaking on podcasts, you're doing shop tours with other companies. You are not living in a silo. You are very, very plugged into the industry. You know everyone and you are known by everyone. And so this question is particularly relevant to you as someone who kind of goes to trade shows and goes to conferences and networks and speaks with people and does the cocktail hour with people. You're in the mix. When you talk to people and you think about the conversations that you have and the attitudes that you pick up on when it comes to driving revenue in landscaping, what do you think are the most unhealthy views that you commonly hear landscapers have about building a revenue machine in their business?
They have to expand geographically to increase their revenue because they've attained saturation or they've gotten all the good clients in their area they serve. So I have to expand geographically if I want to grow my revenue. That's an adage I hear all the time that I think is inherently false. Now, there's probably a few outliers out there in the middle of America that have small towns they operate in, but for the most part, I definitely think there's more market share to have in your market. Number two is I have to be involved with the sales process to close a deal because I'm the leader, I'm the CEO, I'm the face, I'm the person the client wants to see in the room when they're making a decision on which company to go with. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I think it's completely opposite of that. I think having a presence is great, but when you have a sales team and a leader and an operations leader that can go in and explain that we are a company that does not need the owner day-to-day to run, the owner provides strategic oversight, that builds trust and confidence with your team. Now, you can go too far in the other direction, and we can look at maybe the bigger, more publicly traded companies in our market today where the CEO is so disconnected that the clients are frustrated with that. But you don't need to be involved with every sell. Those are two big ones I hear. A third one I would say is I can't increase my pricing because I will lose clients. And that is a huge thing. So now people say, if I want to grow, if I want to increase revenue, I have to reduce my pricing to get more competitive, to increase my market share in our market or our geographic region, which again, I couldn't disagree with that more. I think it's the complete opposite. You raise prices, you attract better clients and more ideal clientele. And in most cases, you end up growing much, much faster with maybe the same amount of clients. And that usually brings in with it a very nice increase in revenue and margin.
So we were texting yesterday and I was like, Justin, we have this LeanScaper's revenue intensive is just around the corner. I want to do something that's kind of aligned in terms of themes with that. And so I was like, okay, 3 super boring like principles to master if you want to build a revenue engine like the one that K&D has. And you texted me 4. And so what they were, it was like follow a boring process, more of what you're good at, predictable results through labor management, and then spend time with your best sales guy. And I've not given away the lead by giving those out. I just want to add the bullets and then we can backfill them together. I'd love to start on this follow a process sort of pre-flight checklist idea that you guys think you're really good at there.
Yeah, we've seen this over the last 2 years as we've implemented a very high level sales process. And so the point of this idea is if you create a process that is so repeatable, anyone could do it that is trained in sales or trained in communication, really. They know what to say when the phone rings, or if it's outbound, what to say when you walk into someone's office. And they can explain to that potential client exactly what's going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4 days as we work through this sales process. And then they can explain what happens after we sign a contract and what that first 90 days looks like, whether it's a new build or a maintenance project. They can walk the client through this process. And no matter who you talk to at any branch, or potentially whether they've been at K&D for 5 years or 5 days, you're going to get basically the exact same conversation with everyone you talk to. And I tie this back to aviation, where the most amazing thing. 2 pilots who have been flying for 20 years each never met each other until an hour before they're about to fly 250 souls across the United States. They meet an hour before that flight, and there is a process they follow that is repeatable and safe to ensure that the communication they have with each other, they can work together in tandem to navigate this 100-ton flying piece of steel across the country, 30,000 feet above the earth, in a very safe manner, and land that plane and deboard that plane safely and on time, to sometimes within the minute of a predetermined time. And that ability we have achieved in the aviation, commercial aviation space is so magnificent. And I think we take for granted the amount of process that is built into that 1 or 2 or 3 hour flight. And so we've tried to take that idea and apply it, that methodology, and apply it to the sales side and say, hey, what if we just created this system and this process that is almost unbreakable, and any person with good communication skills can run a successful sales process and get predictable results. That, I believe, is how you scale revenue and scale a sales team.
When people talk about like a standardized sales process, usually the feature and the benefit that they're talking about is like, well, it's a really predictable process for your customer and they get the same thing every time. And I think that that's an important, albeit kind of an obvious takeaway. The less obvious one that I don't think people talk about very often is what that does for the sales team that runs it. There's kind of like, there's these hidden like unexpected benefits that you don't really realize until you've implemented them. And so when you think about the structure that provides, the guardrails that it provides, the simplicity it provides, not for the customer, but for the team that actually has to run that process, what have you learned that does for a team?
Well, just like the pilots, I mean, it reduces stress, because when you're in a sales position, there's an immense amount of stress around closing a deal, especially if it's an ideal client that marketing has spent all this money to get the phone to ring, and that phone rings, and let's just say residential design build for us. Hey, we got a $400,000 budget. We just remodeled our house and we need a design and build, and it's 20 minutes from our office. The amount of pressure that is put on a salesperson when they pick up that phone call and they're in charge of closing that deal can break people. I've seen it break people. And that's just one. Imagine that happening 3, 4, 5 times a day, every single day. That compounding amount of stress will lead people into a burnout state. And so this basically allows them to not rely on their mental capacity to decide what to do. They just follow the process. And they just boom, 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 go down the checklist. And it's the next step is obvious. And that's, I think, what we really want to make it. We want to make the next step so obvious that no one has to think about it. You just follow the process.
Yeah, it's really well said. It does give a certain like calming sense to when you know that, no matter what happens at this estimate that I'm driving up to, if I stick to these 8 steps that we've defined, my likelihood of success is 45%. And we know that because we have historical data and we track it, and I can sort of like, whatever happens, I can just run a process and sort of forget about the outcome, which when you're trying to scale a business and you're trying to run systems through a number of different people, you really want people to it sounds weird, but you actually kind of want people to let go of outcomes. Just like be super focused on the next step. What's the next step? Sell to the next step. Oh, you know what? They're not ready to close today. Cool. We have an awesome follow-up sequence. No problem. Here's your nice proposal. Next touch point is in a few days. Let me know, blah, blah, blah. Here's some collateral. There's this unbelievable calming effect that it creates for the whole team. And I've sold under both systems, and running without a process is not only ineffective, but it's pretty not fun as well.
It's not. I've been there too.
Yeah. The next thing on your list was just simply like more of what you're good at. And I'd love for you to expand on that point and particularly tie it into how that truly drives revenue the way that it has for you guys.
Yeah, we have a tendency as CEO or an owner or a divisional leader that when something's working really well, we kind of just say, cool, it's working good. I'm going to go find something new to do. and you start putting that energy into a new area, the shiny object, a new service line, a new widget to sell to your clients, or a new service to upsell. Hey, we're going to add more plant healthcare. We're going to start doing tree work. When in reality, if you can, and most people don't have the ability to do this, when you really break down your net profit by customer sector, there's most likely one sector or one type of customer that is providing 70% of your net profit. Maybe that's maintenance. Maybe that's construction. Maybe that's a specific type of construction. Maybe it's specifically, homeowners that are doing full remodels, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's general contractors. But when you find out what you're really good at, and usually it's inherently what the CEO or the owner used to do in their previous life, they built that team up really well, and do more of that, it's amazing what happens to your bottom line and your top line. We're talking about revenue. We're talking about growth here on this podcast. So when you focus on doing more of what you're good at, whether it's vertically increasing your volume in one area, or growing horizontally, growing geographically into new markets and offering that same service, but staying very narrow in that service. I mean, everyone talks about niching down and getting down into a small service. And oftentimes people will look for a niche to get into. And all they need to do is look internally. Like, you're already probably doing something really, really well. And it's probably the thing in your company you spend the least amount of time at because it goes so well. And if you can focus more time in that, and you can increase the volume of what you do, even if it's not sexy, and that's the hard part that most people miss, even if it's not fun, that's something that you really have to investigate. And I think it's worth putting some effort and time into figuring out, what are you really good at and how do I do more of that?
What kind of discipline is required to actually stick to that principle? Because there's a certain level of just distractedness or excitedness that most entrepreneurs have. I mean, what you've just laid out makes perfect sense. Anyone can hear that and go, yeah, Justin's right. I get that intellectually. But when you actually have to apply it, there's a certain level of don't be tempted. Like, you really have to be pretty honest and pretty strict with yourself in order to enforce that principle. And what's been your experience with that? Is it hard to do? Is it easier once you realize the payoff? Like, what's been your experience?
Well, it's kind of funny because I think we could be a $40 million company if I was better at this. So right.
So you're not perfect either.
No. And that's such a great point. This is one of my weak points. I mean, this is an area of why my chief operating officer, John Wint, is my right-hand person. We work together daily because he helps me stay disciplined in this area. He's like, hey, Justin, whoa. We don't need to go do that. We just need to do more of what we're good at. So I would have to say this is something John really has taught me. And for me, I'm always getting these new ideas. And I think a lot of people probably listening to this, you're always getting these new ideas of what you want to do in the business. You really need that person you can filter your ideas through that's going to kind of check you and help keep you disciplined, help keep you focused. Because I'm the worst when it comes to this. Like, I think we've kind of increased the amount of things we have done. And then over the last 2 or 3 years, we've decreased the amount of things that we are doing. And that has enabled us to scale. We went from 15 million to 20 million in about 9 months when John came on board and really helped us dial in to the 3 things that we're extremely good at. We have 3 leaders in each division that focus on very narrow client personas.
What's the third principle that you guys have followed to your success?
So this one's a little bit obvious, but very hard to practice. It's really creating predictable results around your labor hour management and your estimated to actual hours. It's something that if you listen to Mark Bradley obviously he talks about labor hour management a lot, and your revenue per labor dollar, he doesn't use the word labor, but revenue per hour for your team member. And when you start to understand how to measure that, and you can predictably estimate a job, whether it's a maintenance job needing 8 hours of team hours a week, or it's a construction job and you have 350 hours budgeted, you can deliver those projects or those properties on time to within 1 or 5% of that number. it's amazing what happens to your revenue, because now you actually know your numbers, not just from a pricing perception, but you know it from an hour perspective. And the team hours are the most important thing, I think, when it comes to our landscape industry. If you miss on hours, I think you're going to miss on materials, subcontractors, and other costs that go into providing support for that project.
Why do you think that? That's interesting. You say that it's like the master KPI. It's like if you get this one, everything downstream works. If you screw it up, everything downstream is screwed up.
We have tested this for years. We rolled this out in 2021, and this has been our number one KPI ever since. And I see it on our projects in progress report. So I look at all of our jobs in progress. We have like 28 jobs right now in progress. And I look at all the labor variance, and it's red if it's over 100%. And the red jobs also have material that's typically red, subcontractors that are typically red, rented equipment. Just think about it. You're on the job for a couple more days and you have a good amount of equipment that's rented. You've got to pay for that equipment the few more days. The fuel that goes into the truck to drive to the job site, well, if you go over a day or two, there's 2 more days of fuel that you have to pay that vehicle to be there. So all these costs start piling up. And then the worst thing when we're talking about revenue is if you are on a project for an extra just one day, well, you're not only not probably earning any revenue that day, but you're not earning revenue on another job. So it's like it's costing you money and you're not earning revenue. So it's a double hit on your expenses and a 0 hit on your revenue. And it just deteriorates revenue faster than anything. I believe one day over a week, that could easily add up to just, you can do the math on that. You have 50 weeks that you're operating in nicer climates. And if you're 50 days over and your revenue's maybe $5,000 a day, that adds up pretty quickly to $2.5 million that you could be leaving on the table as just going over one day a week. It's pretty significant.
For you guys, what was the biggest unlock to figure this out? I think that this is one of these things that's really well understood and very rarely done well. Everyone gets that you estimate a project, and in that estimate, there's a certain amount that you've allocated for labor, a certain amount for subs, a certain amount for material, and definitely a certain amount for margin. And then, weeks later or months later, you go back to this job that you estimated before and you go and execute the plan. And anyone that's been in business for any amount of time remembers that first job. I certainly do, where you're looking at your labor budget and you've blown through it on the first day or the first week, and you're like, we're already over. We're not even halfway finished. It's super humbling, and it takes quite a while to kind of learn the skill set to manage labor hours well. What is there a tip or a trick when it comes to how estimation happens, or even further upstream, how design happens? Is there a way, day to day, week to week, that crews are managed on site? Does it have to do with, where equipment is set up and how equipment is deployed? There's definitely things that you've learned how to do that your team probably does unconsciously now, that someone who's struggling in their first couple of years, who's, man, these labor hours are way off the estimate every time. What would you tell that person to really focus on to dial this in?
Well, all those things you said are true. And what you have to do is you have to go through the process for your own team. And there's no shortcut to this, unfortunately. I wish there was. So it starts with planning is I think the lowest hanging fruit is just spend some time pre-planning a job with your crew, with your technicians, the person that bid or designed the job, the person that's managing the job, the person that's actually performing the work, and ideally bring the client into that meeting as well and have a meeting about how this job's going to go down. I think that's the number one thing that most people don't take the time to do. You have to pull your crew out of the field for an hour or two on a job they're currently working at. So this is hard. Usually it's in the overtime hours when this meeting happens. But that's the number one thing we found to improve labor variance and improve labor hour management. But here's the process that everyone has to go through to become, I think, elite at managing hours. You have to first track the hours that you estimate. You have to have that recorded and written down. Even if you guys aren't doing this at all, if you could just start by putting down how many days and how many people each day are going to be on this job. What's the estimate? You may be estimating by square footage, but you got to back that into some type of a total amount of hours. Then how many hours did it take to do the job? And compare those two numbers. And oftentimes you're going to find that when you really measure this and you measure it closely and you include the hours that goes into planning the job, driving to the job, loading material and equipment for the job, that all has to be accounted to the job. That can't just be not accounted for. You're going to be over hours. You're probably going to be over hours by 125 to 130%. I know this because I went through the same process. And then you're going to have to look and ask your team together. You're going to debrief what happened and ask, hey, where'd we go over? And it's going to be hard to know where you went over at first until you start tracking it by work area, like planting and hardscape or mowing and shrub pruning if you're maintenance. But once you start to figure out where you're going over hours, Benji, then you can start actually changing some of your processes. Maybe we're realizing we're designing these patios with these beautiful, radiuses, but we're not including enough time to cut the pavers for these radiuses. So if we want to estimate with these hours, we have to have square or rectangular patios. And if we really like the radiuses and our clients like the radiuses, then we need to add some hours for cutting those pavers. And once you start to get this data coming back after each job, and it takes, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this takes years to perfect. And I don't even think we're not perfect after 5 years. You just start to build out, okay, let's put an SOP in for that. Let's put an SOP in for this. And you start to just fix every part of the ship, and you touch every bolt, and you start to actually get to a point where things are running really smoothly, automatically, like you said. And then you repeat the process, because sooner or later, that's going to lead you to growth. And that growth is going to lead you to new team members. And those new team members are going to lead you to new challenges and new overages and hours. And you're going to have to debrief again and fix the process and create new SOPs. It's just a constant improvement cycle that you have to embrace if you're wanting to grow a company in any of this industries, maintenance or commercial or residential construction.
I want to make a couple of quick points. One is like landscaping as a business functionally is one of the craziest. I'll just say like one of the dumbest businesses from a business standpoint ever invented. Like now we love it. Everyone listening to this podcast is passionate about it. But if you just looked at it from fundamentals, you're like, you're working on extremely expensive, high risk projects that are exposed in weather. You're working generally with difficult and picky clients. You're working with equipment that breaks down and is really expensive and needs to be financed and fueled. And then the people running that are human beings who need to be managed. You're like, this is crazy. Why did I decide to do this? This is such a hard business. So that's the first bit that makes this whole recipe building exercise difficult. The second part that I think, and you said it well, you kind of do a bit of this, a bit of that. It is a bit of a dance. Because two things can be true at once. It can be true that on one project, your crew was just objectively slow and disorganized and they botched a section and were over hours. But a different section of that same project, it could just be that you misestimated. And what's going to be difficult is you're going to have both of those systems kind of blaring at you. Whoever did the estimate is going to be claiming, I did this perfect. The crews are really slow. And then the crews are like, this person upstream screwed us. And it really takes a certain level of alertness and focus and paying attention to know which is which. And that's why you said it takes years. And eventually you kind of get that money-making recipe figured out. The variances go way down. They're not perfect. I'm sure even in your businesses, projects where you're like, what the hell happened here? But the point is you need to have some patience and really, really begin with the actual field data. That's your single source of truth. And then you're going to start to make tweaks to the design process, tweaks to the estimating process, tweaks to the expectation setting process with customers. And then you can work on different, the step-by-step processes on site or how equipment gets used. The whole thing does take time. Once you get it right, you have a lot more fun. And I would encourage people who feel stuck there to just kind of keep going and be extremely data-minded. But yeah, I can't say it clearly enough. These are hard businesses to run. I'm sure many people running a landscaping business are like, man, why didn't I start a coffee shop? That sounds so easy. Play some nice music in the background, make a cappuccino.
Yeah, you're protected. I'll add, Benji, one quick thing. when you start to do this and you start to focus on hour management, your team starts to focus on hour management, as long as they have an incentive built around that, which we have. And I encourage people to do that. And what happens when the client, especially residential clients, they come out and say, hey, can we just add a few more plants here? I went to Home Depot and bought some plants. Can you guys put them in today? The crew is going to start to push back on what we call scope creep. And if you do residential installations, you have scope creep. I don't care how clean you are. You have 5 to 7% of every job. There's things that are being added that are not being accounted for. And the crew is happy to please. That's how we taught them. So once you start enabling and empowering the crew, you'll start to see pushback. And the crew says, hey, we'd love to plant those flowers for you. We'd love to extend the patio another 5 feet. Let me just get my project manager, or maybe if they're empowered using LeanScaper, they can go ahead and spin up a quick change order and get that work approved. And then they're getting paid for those hours, even if it's 1 or 2 hours.
What is the fourth and final boring thing that you guys do that drives revenue?
The fourth and final thing is, again, something that's obvious, but very hard to practice, which is spend more time with your A players. I have found that, especially in sales, there is an very clear outsized return on time invested with people who are extremely well talented naturally and really good at what they do versus the people who are always struggling. Now, I don't mean to abandon the people who are always struggling. Let's help them become successful, or let's gracefully exit them from our organization. 1 or 2 of those things need to become true. We need to take our B players and get them to A's, and we need to exit our C players. But when you start to focus your time as a leader on your A players and you give them more time than your B players, which is completely against all natural approaches to our brain chemistry, you will see that those A players oftentimes will provide a 3 to 5x sales number compared to a B or C player. And I don't mean to just assign, rank people. I'm not trying to be cold here, but the truth of the matter is I have seen from my experience, there are people who can sell 3 to 5 times more revenue as a total just top performing salesperson than what would say your average salesperson is going to do. And when you spend time with them, you can help them become that 3 to 5x sales performer rather than average.
Disproportionate amount of return on investment for time when it comes to talent and people. I've said this on other episodes. I think that people make the mistake of thinking that it's a marginal return when you take someone and put some time into coaching or skill development or send them to a course, whatever. It's an order of magnitude. In other words, I've used this example before, but the best carpenter on a construction crew is not 50% better than the worst carpenter. They are 5 times better, and in some cases more. So it's like you don't get it. This isn't we're not trying to get a delta of a 30% improvement. You're actually trying to double and sometimes triple someone who's right on that B to A cusp, or maybe they're an A minus and we're trying to get them to an A plus. That is time such well spent. And the reason, well, I'm curious, Justin, is the reason we don't do it kind of the same reason that, A students don't get the attention in class? The leader, in this metaphor, the teacher's just too busy kind of dealing with the delinquents. That's maybe not the right term. Dealing with the really, really struggling people on the team. All the attention goes to that, unfortunately, the bottom 80% and not the top 20% if we're using the Pareto principle.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We have a desire, especially for the people listening to this. I think most of us we have a desire to help people. We have a desire to help people achieve more. And when people are struggling and not hitting their goals, we tend to focus on them and give them more attention to help them succeed, which I think is admirable, and we should do that. But like you said, when you start to actually intentionally focus on your top 20%, the results are incredible. I've seen it personally. We have our sales team, our residential sales team leader, or team member. He's not a leader. He's going to sell close to $7 million this year. Our commercial sales team, they're going to, one person's going to sell well over 5 million, maybe 6 million if something goes through. So 5 million in total annual sales for construction is not unheard of for our sales team members. And that's because I believe we've really focused on giving the best people the best attention.
Okay, I promised I would get you out of here on time, and I will. So I have a quick fire round and then a couple closing questions. Quick fire round is this. I've got 5 questions that are pretty straightforward. I just want to hit rather quickly. They're kind of fun ones, all to do with growing revenue.
Awesome.
You ready?
Yep, let's go.
What is one marketing channel that you can't believe most landscapers sleep on?
Donations to your community and publicizing that work. It's incredible return. Just do one day, a quarter, and watch what happens.
One hire that CEOs looking to scale revenue need to make.
You need a very, very great operations leader or a sales leader. Whatever you're the worst at, replace yourself at that. Operations or sales. Most CEOs will lean one way or the other.
What's the best sales book you've ever read?
You know what? It's funny because it's not really a sales book, but it's How to Make a Few $1 billion by Brad Jacobs. And it will change your mindset on revenue completely.
You're like the 10th person to tell me about that book. I think it's probably time I add it to the queue. I keep hearing it come up, and I haven't read it yet.
It's a must listen, dude. Yeah. It's not even a sales book, but it totally changed my perspective on sales.
Okay, two fun ones to close. What is a salesperson green flag? Meaning you're talking to a potential sales hire and you're like, you know what? This is a green flag is like a good sign. You've heard something, you've seen something, you're like, ooh, I'm liking this. So what's a salesperson green flag to Justin White?
They do not have a desire or a need to be liked by other people.
No people pleasers.
No people pleasers.
Why is it important? Can we linger on that for a second?
Yeah.
Because there's something kind of profound here, especially for sales. Why is that important?
Well, it's opposite of what most people think a salesperson should be good at, right? You should be good at getting people to like you, but there's a difference between getting people to like you and a need to be liked. When you have a need to be liked, you are going to serve that need more than you will serve the need for sales and to close deals. And you will not tell the client what they need to hear. And you'll have the hardest thing you're going to do is you're not going to be able to say no to a client when you need to back out of that sales process. And the best salespeople say no early and often and focus on the real winners.
Clip that for socials.
There we go. I know.
We'll flip this one around. The last question: what is a marketing red flag? So you're sitting now with maybe it's an agency owner and they want your business, or maybe it's a role. You're bringing in a director of marketing or a coordinator. Or you're bringing in someone to hire, but you're sitting across from this marketing person, and you're like, this is a red flag. I don't know about this.
They know exactly what you're doing wrong. And they know exactly how to fix it, and they tell you that. I think that's very short-sighted.
How could they? How could they know? They have no idea.
I've been told that many times. I've hired those people. I've been let down. So now I hire people who tell me, I have no idea how I'm going to fix your problems, but together we'll figure out a way.
That's so funny. That is a much better approach, isn't it? I have no idea how to fix your problems, but you're going to pay me and we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
At least they're being honest. Hey, so here I got just a couple easy ones to close, Justin. One of the things I'm really interested to chat with you more about, and I'm sure we'll get into this in our upcoming event, but you guys have made the decision to move into the direction of like working with LeanScaper, adopting LeanScaper OS next year. You've got a big team, so this is a pretty holistic change that you've made the strategic decision to make, and I realize it sounds self-centered to talk about that on the LeanScaper podcast, but I do think it's worthwhile to just hear, what your mindset is towards that, why you've made that change, what you're hoping to get out of it. What is this whole move for you guys at K&D about?
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors that weigh into this decision. We've been on a strategic operating system since 2015. We started on Scale Up and the Rockefeller Habits, famously put together by Vern Harnish. Moved into Gino Wickman's EOS in 2018 and 2019. We've been operating on EOS, I think, very successfully since. And in 2026, we're moving to LeanScaper. And the main reason is I believe that in 2026 and the next 5 years, we're going to see a massive change in consumer and team member behavior and the desire for transparency around strategy, the desire for transparency around system and process management, and the desire to move extremely quickly. And that is exactly what, in my view, LeanScaper provides. It provides us with the ability to get strategy done very, very quickly and then implement that on a weekly level. I don't want to go through this once a year strategy workshop and then tell the team what the plan is and then park that on the shelf for 12 months. Like, I want to do these weekly sprints with Mark and my team, and I want to get the most progress made every single week, because I believe that in 2026, there's an outsized advantage to people who are willing and able to change fast. And I think that's what LeanScaper is. It's coming to fruition in front of our eyes. I mean, you log into Lana AI and it is beta, which I love. I like, some people are like, oh, I'm going to wait for it to be finished or totally finished. I'm like, do you realize that you kind of get to shape this thing right now? And in a lot of ways, like, when you learn with a product as it's coming to fruition, you are going to be the dominant force in your market. So at K&D, we don't dabble. We go all in. And a lot of our software partners know that because we've partnered very closely with them. Aspire, Weathermatic, Crest are just a few that we've really, really gone all in with when we go all in. And LeanScaper is our partner of 2026 that we're going all in with. I have 8 team members, including myself, on my leadership team. Every single one of us, we are in the sprints. We are going to every single intensive in 2026. We've already marked it out in our calendar. We're using those meetings as a strategy. So we're going to meet and we're going to stay an extra 2 days to do our quarterly planning sessions. And we're just going to focus everything around that calendar. So super excited for that.
And we're excited to have you. We've backed into the perfect closing question, which I've been wanting to ask you this whole conversation. And it is about strategy, in particular about how to communicate it. And I'm asking this selfishly, honestly, Justin, because I'm going through this right now. And this is something that I'm bad at. And I know a strategy is only as effective as your team's ability to understand it. And their ability to understand it comes down to your ability to communicate it. And I'm one of these people that, spreadsheets and whiteboards, and I get these and it all makes sense in my mind. And then I just word salad it to the team, and people scratch their heads and look at me like, huh? And I don't think I'm unique in that regard. I think a lot of people struggle with this. What have you learned? Because you're really good at this, to take strategy, which is sometimes complex and sweeping and broad and long-term and visionary. You take this thing and you distill it to a point where you can explain it. It's so clean. It's so hygienic. The concept is so easy that you can explain it to anyone on your team, no matter their level, in 60 seconds or less.
It's a great question. And I've got to kind of ping my buddy Simon Sinek on this one. I think he is the leader when it comes to communicating strategy. And we've really adopted his methodology. Strategy is not a revenue number. Strategy is not wanting to be the best at something. Strategy is not, it's not an exit. No one cares about you exiting and becoming a rich, successfully sold out entrepreneur. Strategy is why you're doing what you're doing. And what's the just cause? Again, Simon Sinek term, what's the just cause for what we do? Why should I wake up at 4:45 every morning and show up in freezing weather to go shovel snow or shovel gravel or plant plants or mow lawns for this company? At honestly a wage that I'm embarrassed about, that our industry average wage is $25 an hour for team members right now from a recent benchmark report. I'm embarrassed by that. We need to get that up. I mean, I have a mission for $100,000 minimum salary at K&D. That's one of our just causes. That's why we work so hard. And our strategy is to raise the bar in the landscape industry. We've identified some outcomes that we know are going to happen, or at least we hope that will happen. One of them is we want to achieve $1 billion in valuation and take a company public in the next 10 years. We want to create 35 millionaires at K&D Landscaping that were just employees that turned equity owners and then millionaires. We want to create $150 million of employee wealth the day we go public. That's a liquid. That's not locked up in some phantom stock program. We want to create $100,000 minimum salary. I mean, these are milestones that are built into our strategy. But at the end of the day, our strategy, our mission, everything we exist for is to raise the bar in the landscape industry so that the next generation can go further than we did.
I love it. What a perfect note to end on, Justin. You share so much wisdom with me and with everyone every time I see you or talk to you. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate and admire what you guys are doing, and we'll see you in Scottsdale.
Yeah, Benji, thanks so much, brother. I'll see you in about a month.
Take care, man. Bye.
All right, peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Trades Talk, where the next generation of disruptors comes to raise the bar. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone in the trades who's ready to level up. For more tools, insights, and community, follow host Justin White and join the movement at jwhitegroup.com.